Radio W3 is going to be, it's in this state, I think it's over towards New York, Jersey area, if I recall right.
Okay, we're live.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mark?
Well, good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Thanks, Doug. This is Mark Sertzi. I'll be your MC this evening. First of all, special thanks to Doug Bach for agreeing to do this presentation for us. It's our first online meeting, and Doug is also hosting tonight, so thank you very much, Doug. And we have a special guest with us this evening. The great John Lyons, formerly of Seven Ponds Astronomy Club, is here with us live in Doug Bauer's basement.
In person. Hi there.
So hit the next slide, please, Doug. We usually do the housekeeping stuff, but since we are online, we'll skip the usual stuff. I just wanted to talk about the Nature Center for a minute in case people have questions. So the building is open. However, only the gift shop and the restrooms are available to visitors and members. The trails are open to you, and we're available to do telescoping at the Nature Center. That's provided you call first and let them know that you'll be there. And the Nature Center is having no events or club meetings or club events until further notice. That originally was scheduled through the end of summer. That is up in the air still at the moment. Next slide, please, Doug. So for coming events, we have one that it's hard scheduled. August 1st is Gordon Miller, who is online with us right now. And he's doing Somewhere Under the Rainbow, an introduction to amateur radio astronomy. That's going to be a meeting via Zoom rather than WebEx. And just for your information. And once we get the details settled, then we'll post the links on Facebook and on the website meeting. We do have other meetings scheduled in the fall, but we don't know what the status of the Nature Center is going to be then. So you'll still see those on the website and Facebook, but we don't know ultimately how that's going to work out. Next, Doug, please. So this is a shorter agenda as we normally do, but tonight we have Doug Bach opening a portal to the universe, so you want to build an observatory. Doug was the former president and first vice president of the Warren Astronomical Society. He was a former editor of the WASP newsletter, which is the Warren Club's newsletter. He's a member of WASP, FAAC, the Ford Club, the Lowbrows, and Seven Ponds Astronomy Club. Doug, are there any more?
Yeah, currently I'm still a member of the GM Club, too.
The GM Club, okay. Most of you know Doug is an avid and highly skilled astro imager, and he is recently retired, but he had 41 years in IT and a real-time system specialist. That was mainly with Ford, Doug, I believe.
That's correct.
So without further ado, we could give a quick round of applause for Doug, and Doug, it's all yours.
All right, let me. So this is going to be a little bit of history on the building of what every amateur astronomer dreams of, and that's an observatory of some sort. The agenda is going to be the beginning, what happened at the beginning, what the expansion was, the renovations, the demolition, the rebirth, the current system, and some results. And before I go further on that, my telescope observations started back in 1965 through a 3-inch F10 Edmund Scientific Newtonian, where I had a neighbor who was a science teacher, and he introduced me to telescopic astronomy back in '65. I looked at M13 and Saturn for the first time, and of course, it's a lot of us that hooked me. So, and then in 1968, I was given a 60 millimeter telescope refractor, which I used until 1973, when I then built a couple of 8-inch telescopes. And I also joined the Warren Astronomical Society in 1973 and have been a continuous member of that club since then. And then I went to MSU from 1974 to 77, and then worked at Ford starting in 77. And while I was working at Ford from 77 to 1984, I lived in Detroit and used to commute out to Brighton State Recreational Park with my 8-inch f7 to do astrophotography. So I was a mobile observer and imager up until 1984. So this talk now is about the endeavors in astronomy from 84 to the present. So let's see here. So in the beginning, living in Detroit, I was interested in, and I was renting actually, so I was interested in moving out into the country for my hobby and to raise the family. So in 83, I bought 3.5 acres, which is where I'm sitting right now. And we had a house built at that time, and we moved into that house in February of 84. So plans were started for the observatory, and construction began in late October of 1984. I actually did the official thing and got an official building permit for 2 sheds, not just 1, but 2. And I actually had an electrical permit as well. And I come to find out the county said, well, you didn't need either one of those. Your sheds are too small to worry about. And I said, that's fine. At least I got it officially done, so I don't have to worry about it. And the people that worked on this building construction, there were 4 of us primarily, and they were Roger Tanner, some of you may know, Bob Lennox, Ken Kelly, and myself. And along the way, I had people like Doug Nell and John Anderson come out and help on occasion for various things. And you'll see in the next slide here, Roger Tanner up here in the right-hand corner, while I think either Doug Nell or not sure who was in the hole there, but the bottom picture there is John Anderson with a pickaxe. We have a lot of clay out here, so we had to use a pickaxe for all the holes and the trenches in order to get them down as deep as we wanted to. Now John is 6'4", so you kind of get an idea how deep that hole was. So yeah, we dug the hole for the pier first, and then laid out some places here on the bottom picture where we were going to put some pads that were 6 foot by 6 foot as well as part of the project. Once those holes and those platforms were built or furred out for pouring, I had the guy with the cement truck come in, and he looked at the 2 pads. He says, where am I going to put this 3 yards of cement? And I said, well, look down this little hole here on the left-hand corner. He says, oh, okay, because there's almost 2 cubic yards that went into this hole. This is a rebar that's hanging from this bracket here into the hole, so that when it filled in, it would surround the rebar and give us a nice rigid structure for the steel pier that we would be putting on, excuse me, in the future. We had to make a framework for the top. We poured the pier, and we poured the pads, as you can see here. And there's Ken Kelly and Roger Tanner, Bob Lennox, and John Anderson. And this is my wife watching by while I take pictures. I basically supervised a lot. But the next thing we did was we had to dig the holes for the outriggers and also for the posts for the platform. We use this 2-man auger. By now I think we're into November, and obviously there's some snow on the ground. And with this 2-man auger, with the clay, every once in a while we'd hit some rocks in the clay, and it would throw the 2 of us off that auger. So we had to kind of be careful with not being thrown someplace where something sharp might stab us. So then we put the platform in with the pier, with the posts. And once we got that level, we bolted them together, and then we poured the cement for the post after that. And I marked it with a quarter, so it's dated 1984, so that when I get old and gray and I don't remember when I built it, I can go out and look at that quarter, and I'll know that's when I started it. So after that, we started building the walls. They're made out of 2x6s. The 4x4s actually are part of the wall. We left that in there for structural reasons. We actually over engineered this beast, but we kind of like to, a bunch of engineers get together. We always over engineer stuff, So it did a good job though for quite a long while. So these lower walls were at 40-inch walls, so that we'd have low horizon. And I did that because of the targeted system that was going to go in place, which you'll see in a bit. Was a reflector out of GE mount. I wanted to be able to get down fairly close to the horizon for some of the solar system events, like Venus and Mercury and etc. And crescent moons. So that's why we made the walls, the lower walls, 40 inches. The upper section, though, was 3 foot, 36-inch walls, and with trusses that we built, the trusses. And I was in such a hurry to get this done that this upper section you see in the upper left, I got just that much on to give it structural integrity while it was on the ground. Then I put 2x4s on either side here and then slid that whole structure up onto the top of the walls by myself. But that was back when I was young. And finished it up, got the outriggers in. That's Roger up there on top. We're starting to put on the sheathing for the roof. And then here it is in the finished product. The building is complete. And this is the 12.5-inch F6 Meade research grade OTA that we put in the observatory. The mount here was a mount that I built in 1973 in high school at using the machine shop that we had at the high school. I was fortunate enough to have the homeroom teacher. I mean what do they call it? I lost track. Where you go out into the gym with a bunch of desks and everything, and it's not a class; it's a study hall. My 6-hour study hall was at the same time that the machine shop teacher had that hour free. So I went down there and I said to him, I have a drawing here of what I want to build. And he says, oh, that's pretty good. What we can do is we can have the drafting teacher get one of the students to do a formal drawings for it and then have it built here. Or you can build it in the shop here. So that's what we did. And it took me one semester to finish all that up. And that has got 2-inch stainless steel shafts on it. And it held this 75-pound tube assembly with 75 pounds of counterweights just fine on top of this steel pier that was bolted to that cement pier that I showed you earlier. So that 12.5-inch in there was in there for about 15 years. But in the mid-90s, we put a second observatory. Remember that permit for 2 sheds? Well, here was the second shed. It showed up a decade later, but that's okay. And this was Lou Fakes' old shed or observatory that he gave to the Warren Astronomical Society when he moved to Arizona. And the Warren Club didn't know what to do with it. So I offered them $100, and they said, you can have it. And we built a platform over the second pad out there. And Steve Agus and Bob Keller and a few others helped bring it out here, and we put it on this platform. And then we installed a pier for it, and Clay Kessler and Jack Kennedy were my cohorts in the in the mid-90s rather. And Jack's 10-inch was placed on this pier, and that's what he used in this observatory. Let's see here. Some renovations had to occur because, wood doesn't last forever. So we had to redo the roof. Jack Kennedy and I were up on the roof redoing that with new shingling, etc. So that was one of the renovations we had to do back then. Then the observatory went idle for a while. Well, not exactly. I should have said that after that renovation, I put 1999. I put an LX200 10-inch, my own LX200 10-inch in the observatory for about 2 years and tried some imaging with it. And then the observatory sat kind of idle for about 10 years. While I went mobile again with a 10-inch Dob in 2003, and I started traveling around with that as my observing platform. But in 2012, I bought a 14-inch Dob that I wanted to put in this observatory, so we had to renovate the observatory again. And I got a crew out with a gentleman, Brad Wilson from Canada. He's a contractor. He came out and was my foreman for doing work on the observatory again. And several people came out to help out. That was in 2012. Dale Teamy also came out a week or so later and helped me pull this pier out so that I could put a new platform in for the 14-inch. So this is all the work people are working on it. So the 14-inch f4.6 Newtonian went into place. There's actually a little platform underneath this Dob that is still isolated from the building. So this Dob sat in there starting in 2012, and I would do a lot of visual work with it in the observatory. This is what the observatory looked like after we were done with the renovation. More painting, etc. It's gone through several modifications over that period of time, but that's what we were doing with the 14-inch at that point. And then in January of 2017, I upgraded from that Dob to the Ritchie Cratian system I've got for imaging, and this is the setup in that old observatory, starting basically in January. I bought a couple of more components, a new camera for it in February, but this is the system that I have in there right now. This is a Losmandy G11 mount. This is a ZWO 071 camera. We had a Lodestar guiding camera, and I have an Optec focuser and an on-axis guiding port. I'll go through those things in a little bit here. And what I wanted to do, though, is decided that I was having problems getting the roof off for a couple of winters when we got a lot of snow in there, for two reasons. One, I'm getting a little older and a little weaker. And two, the outriggers on the old setup were starting to spread outward, and which means that the wheels weren't necessarily going to stay on the angle iron that we had on there if they got tilted, kind of tilted a little bit. In fact, that was one of the problems. I'd get it halfway off, and one of the wheels would come off the rail, and now it got stuck, and I have to go out there with a crowbar and put it right back up on there to get it fully open. But when I got a foot of snow on there, I couldn't even open it. It was just too much weight. And my wife finally said to me, she says, one of these days I'm going to find you pinned out there underneath that roof that falls down on you. Why don't you get a new one? I says, okay, I could do that. So I called the next day and set up an appointment to get a new observatory built on the same platform. But what I wanted to show you now is the demolition of the existing one. So we're going to run a little video here. Let me make sure I've got the audio on here correctly. Hang on a second here. Okay. Should have this back online for you. And turn that off. I just saw my participants list go up. Let me go check that. Is everybody getting in okay? Yeah, it looks like everybody's getting in okay. All right, so we're going to run a little video here. Mark, give me a thumbs up if you can hear the audio when it starts up here.
Are we taking the panels off?
Very good. Thank you. We have a bit of a crew out here.
The door to the universe.
Yeah. Actually, that.
Doug, you know the last time I was here?
Yeah.
I was 14.
Now I do feel old, buddy.
Do you remember that black
Just wait until you get my son on the other side there. Danny? Oh, right there.
Tim, there's one more log behind me.
Careful, guys.
Arms aren't that long.
Don't get your hands or anything squashed. If you need to, lift by the braces.
No, let's use this ledge as, to help us out. There we go. Okay, give these guys stop.
Set it down so they can get out. Yeah, we had to tear this one down because it was falling apart long before the other one was. You can at least roll it over there some ways, or set it, or carry it. It'll break apart. Holy cow!
Oh, someone's got to be filming this. Okay, watch out! It's gonna fall. Lock, that's it. All right. Keep trying.
Watch out, Gary.
Yeah, just watch out, guys. This could fall your direction. I feel the wood about to give way. Okay, so this ring's gonna break. Be like there.
And there it goes. And a little bit of room too.
Careful. Yep.
So that white one was Lou's old observatory, which was built in the 70s. So it was even older than mine.
Got this on video?
I think Doug's got the camera going.
I was just looking at the track. Don't worry, I'm not gonna...
Right, that's why I stopped right here.
All right, push it. All right, ready? Clear. Oh, come on!
Bob, if you want to do that again, let me know. I'll prove it. But
Don't be to the sides of it either.
What if we...
Don't be back there. Don't.
Oh, watch out.
Hang on, if you pull down on it.
Why don't we remove the supports below?
Let's up. There you go.
Now it's gone. Let it go.
Let it go.
Yay!
And it stayed in one piece.
Oh, well, I lied.
Oh, the roof came off.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. Awesome.
I could probably sled down from here and get some of the sports off there.
that's the crew that worked on it. You may know many of these people. Some of my family, friends from work, friends from the clubs. Doug Nell, Joe Tocco, Bob McFarland, Gary Billups, Jim Ellers, Shannon, my daughter Sharon, my daughter Stephanie, and her husband Jason, and my son Dan. So we had crew out there. It was fun. Now, given that, what are you going to do now? Got to put an observatory back up, right? Well, the platform's still there. You notice the pier is sitting there. So I got a group called Backyard Observatories to come out and build me a new one. So this is a short video on doing that. This one has no sound, so you just watch it. And they spent 3 days building this, and it's what we have in place now. As you know, I do a lot of time-lapse photography, so this was kind of like one of those things that it was easy for me to do. I just set up a camera and let it run. I got to stop clicking on other things in my other screen here. So I don't know how many people might be on the YouTube channel, but this is, for those that just joined recently, we are recording this. So this crew came out of Ohio. This was observatory number 267. So they've done a few of them. And he used to be a contractor building apartments and houses, and he started doing this. And when it got to the point where he was booked all the time doing observatories, he stopped doing all the rest. And that's all he does is observatories now. It's him and his wife and one of his partners. When they were far enough along, I went in there and hooked up the power so that we had power to the roof. And now with this new roof, it's motorized, so I don't have to worry about pushing it. And it's got a metal roof, so most of the snow slides off the roof in the wintertime. I've had to chip ice off the outriggers twice, though, this last winter, because the snow kind of melts and pours down on the corners there. And I have to get up there on a ladder and with a little crowbar and chip off the ice in order to be able to open it up. You notice they're putting these rails on the side. Those rails on the side are angle iron, and there's little clip-ons or angle iron segments on the roof itself, and they glide underneath this angle iron that's running the length of the roof, and that's called a passive hold down. So it actually keeps the roof from lifting under wind loads or anything like that, which is kind of nice. Don't have to worry about clamping it down. It pulls up just fine. This is the south wall where you can fold down the south wall to get a better southern horizon. And you can see here this rail here and then these clips that hold the roof down. This is the motor that drives the system. It's got a rack and pinion. This is the rack, and then there's a little pinion here, just moves it out. And then I have micro switches to turn it off in both directions. That's the team that did the job. I like the work they did. They did this quickly. They've done all the engineering previously for all the different models that they do, so it wasn't a lot of effort for them. They did build this little staircase for me for free. They says they didn't like this one on the left. They says that one's too ugly. They were afraid to stand on it, so they made me a new one. And then, of course, the 10 inches in there now. This is not the final configuration. This is without my pier extension and etc. But this was the day after they left. That night, I actually opened up and was imaging the very night that they finished doing this. And now you'll see I'm going to close the roof up. It's slow, it's noisy, but all I have to do is go like this with my thumb. The nice thing about this is all I have to do is go out, open it up, take the covers off the lens, fold down the south wall, power everything up, and go back in the house. And then I connect remotely to the observatory with my house computer. So I do all the imaging remotely and I can set it up to automatically run for an entire night. Okay. So that's the way the new observatory looks right now. We did paint all the trim work that needed to be painted this last spring. Actually, it was last fall, now that I think about it. I wanted to show you what the trucks, what we call trucks that run the roof. These wheels each hold, I think it's either 600 or 800 pounds, so it's well rated for the roof that's up there. It's not very heavy. The old roof was about 1,000 pounds, just to let you know. The new one I figure is around 200, 250 pounds. Again, this is the motor that drives it. Here's the rack, and then there's a small pinion right here that runs it back and forth, and there's micro switches here to stop the power in both directions. This is looking south with the south door wall down. This is a recent picture with my new counterweights. I have two 071 cameras on here. One's the old cooled camera for right here, which is the guide now, and then the new Pro camera, which is my acquisition camera. This is looking north. I can see Polaris above this roof line with the PoleMaster camera that I have. There's my laptop, which will run the entire system. The current system is around a little over 2,000 millimeter focal length. Again, it's on a G11 mount with a Gemini 2 control. I have a PoleMaster camera for polar alignment. I use a 071 MC Pro one-shot color camera for my acquisition. And it's 23 by 17 millimeter frame. It's not a full frame. It's about the size of an APS-C chip. And I use an 071 Cool for a guide camera. What that means is both cameras see the same field of view. So if there's a star in my main camera, there's got to be a star in my guide camera for guiding, so I can automatically guide on it. I use a thing called an on-axis guiding port, and that allows the light from the main scope to go straight through at 700 nanometers or higher to the guide camera, which is the straight through camera right here. So there's a dielectric diagonal in there that allows 700 nanometers and above infrared, near infrared through to this camera, so it can find stars for guiding. And then this Pro camera is the main camera that the diagonal brings all the light from below or above, below 700 nanometers out to the main camera. I got Optec focuser. Optionally, I can put this Canon T3i on top of there with either my 10 millimeter or, I got 3 lenses, any of my lenses on here. So I can run anywhere from 10 millimeters to 300 millimeters with this Canon camera piggybacked on top. By the way, this ZWO camera has a USB hub on it. So I can plug in the guide camera to it, and I can plug in this camera to it. And then there's only one USB cable coming down to the pier. And it manages all 3 cameras. I have an Ethernet router. I use that to communicate with the Gemini 2 system on the Lasmandi, and to communicate with the Optec focuser, which is also Ethernet. I also have a USB to Ethernet hub, which is optional. If I want to run my PoleMaster, I usually run it through that hub. And then, of course, the laptop. So that's kind of a breakdown of the equipment sitting there. This is an example of the MC camera, or the 071 camera, size of the chip, give an idea there. And here's the USB 3 in and the 2 USB 2 out. So that's where this hub is located. The fan is for the cooler itself. So I can cool down to minus 30 degrees Celsius below ambient. But I need the power. That's what this is, plugged in to do that, and also to activate the hub. This is the Optec focuser. It's called Focus Links. Lots of little components that you put together to make it work. This is a manual focus mechanism. Not really much to talk about here. This is the controller. I can also put the 4-inch SCT on top with the Canon T3i. I use that sometimes to do some solar work because I have a solar filter for the 4-inch. Again, I can put the 75 to 300 zoom on the Canon as well. In fact, I just recently used it to take 2 hours on the area around the elephant trunk just a couple nights ago. Again, this is the old observatory. These pictures are older. This is the layout. I've got, oops. This is the communications that I have for the, am I still sharing? Yeah. This is the communications that I have laid out for the observatory. I'm trying to figure out why this is not disappearing here. It usually disappears. Anyhow, there we go. The Wi-Fi security cameras in the observatory computer, and they're connecting through this Wi-Fi mesh network router that I have in the observatory out to the house router. And the house computer, which is the one I'm sitting at right now, is how I connect into these two devices. Once I've connected into this house computer or the observatory computer, I can talk to all the hardware. We have the local domain router, we have the primary camera and the USB hub, the guide camera, and the Canon T3i on this USB. And then we have the G11 mount and the focuser, and that USB to Ethernet hub on the other side, running on the Ethernet side. Primary control applications are SG Pro, Sequence Generator Pro, PhD2, and Focus Lock. I sometimes use the SkyX for ad hoc slewing or just kind of perusing what I might want to go after. So the summary of this observatory history is this is what I had in 1984 through August of 2018 with multiple systems in it, with showing you just the latest one I have right here. And then this is the new building with the systems in there. So then, a little while later, actually a little while earlier, I've had property in Boone since my family bought it in 1963. We had 80 acres up there. And 60 of the acres have been sold off by the rest of the family, but I'm the only one that has a piece left, and it's 20 acres. And this is a little video of us building a building up there back in 2014. I had the pine forest cleared so I could get back into the property again. And this is just looking south. And what I'm going to do is play this video of the building of our Boone Hill clubhouse. We broke ground in June of 2014. This was the crew up there setting it up for the cement pour. And then in July, the crew from Tough Shed came up and they built this in a day. The purpose of this building was to store equipment, plus have a warm-up room, plus a place for me to snooze when I'm tired. I call this an observatory, but there is no building that's an observatory. This is a Milky Way shot from Boone. But as you'll see, this is what it looks like. We got an 18-inch Dob there. One of my other, not sure whose scope this is, but sometimes I'll take the imaging system up there. This is a nighttime shot. There's a 25-inch Obsession sitting right here in the dark. This is the 18-inch right here. But what I wanted to show you is that we can put equipment in there and roll it out fully assembled. This is Ron Marver's 18-inch when he had it up there for a couple of months. This is the 18-inch Star Master we have up there. And then Rich Brenn's 25-inch Obsession. And then I have the small scopes, this little 10-inch Dob and this little 5-inch. I've also got a couple of OTAs up there that we could use on a G11 mount if I bring it up. And over here we had a star party with, half a dozen people. I've had scouts up there. I think we had about 18 scouts up there 2 years ago. We're going to do another one in October. They come up and camp in the area, and we do public outreach for them from this facility. So now I'm going to show you a few results. As some of you know, I do time-lapse photography, and sometimes you can take the time-lapse and create star trails out of a full night's data acquisition. And we just happen to have a ghostly image of John Lyons here in this one, which you'll get a little kick out of that, I think. And then this is at Boone with an 18 millimeter lens. This one was done with a 10 millimeter lens. This one is done with an 18 millimeter lens. There was actually some aurora that night, so there's a little bit of greenish glow down here. Of course, I got to do the obligatory lunar shots. There's a full moon on the left, and then during the lunar eclipse we had a year ago. These are both through my 10-inch RC. And you can see a little star up here, but anyways, that's the mid-eclipse. I do a lot of comet work. This is a subset I put together of some of the comet shots that I've taken. This one and this one. This is Hale Bopp that I took in 97, and this is Halley I took in 86. Those are the only two that are film. All the rest of these have been acquired in the last 3 years through my 10-inch. I also track supernova. Here we have a supernova in May of 2017 right there in NGC 6946, which is the fireworks galaxy. And then we have in September it dimmed quite a bit, and by the next May it was basically not there anymore. So I do track that kind of stuff. Here's a supernova. The supernovas I've gotten so far, there's 10 of them. Again, the one in the fireworks galaxy, and then there's a lot of little tiny ones that are pretty dim in these various galaxies. So that's something I like to do. I don't take a lot of nebula, but in fact, this is probably most of the nebula I've taken. I started to take a few more recently, but these are nebula shots with a 10-inch. And I do a lot of galaxies, and clusters of galaxies. As a matter of fact, down here at the bottom, there's a couple of Abell clusters that I've got here. This one's actually the Perseus supercluster, centered around NGC. I think it's 1275 or 1275. I think this is another cluster. But as you can see, there's all kinds of different galaxies that I'll go after and hunt. And here's just an example of some of the Abell clusters. If you can look here, this one's pretty lightweight compared to the other two. But I've taken 8 or 9 Abell clusters, and this just happens to be 3 of them. This one's a pretty nice one here. It's pretty populated as well with a lot of galaxies. And so is this one. This is the most recent one, and that was Abell 2151, and it's got quite a few there too. So that's another pet projects that I like to work on. Is not a lot of resolution, but it's kind of interesting to see how deep you can go into into the sky with this small equipment that I've got. Just some more M51 shot. This is 106. Here's a shot of the horse head. M66. The Hamburger Galaxy 3628. M81, M82, and NGC 891. Again, the Fireworks Galaxy. This one's got 12 hours of data accumulated, which had been collecting during the Supernova hunt on that. I collected a lot of data. I decided to stack it all at once and see what it looked like. Here's the Deerlick and Stephans Quintet. There's a Deerlick group down here with NGC 7331, and Stephans is up here in the left-hand corner. As you can see, the plate solve kind of identifies those along with a lot of the stars. 6 hours of exposure there. The processing tools I use are Deep Sky Stacker to stack PixInsight to do my processing. Almost everything is done in PixInsight. I can stack in PixInsight as well. It's just a little easier to do in DSS. And then if I need some cosmetic work, to get rid of some little gradients or this and that, I'll launch GIMP 2 and use that to clean up some of the data. The control and auxiliary software, again, Sequence Generator Pro allows me to manage all the sequences and the automation of the cameras, and drives the entire system. All the auto guiding, the meridian flips, the plate solves. That's why I can run it fully automated. I just set up the sequence and I can go to bed and it'll run all night. PhD2 for guiding, focus lock for automatic focusing in real time. The focus lock looks at the guide star that's in PhD2 and determines whether to refocus the system or not based on that. Since the guide camera and the main camera are parafocal, if you focus the guide camera, you're focusing the main camera. And then the Sky X is used ad hoc slewing to various objects. I also use DSO browser sometimes to select objects for a run because I can import a whole sequence from DSO browser. It's now called Telescopius into SG Pro. Estimated integration time to date based on the recorded data is about 700 hours of data collected in the last 3 years. The process is I open the roof, I power up the UPS, which has all the components plugged into it. That's an uninterruptible power supply. Gives me clean power to all the electronics. Then in SG Pro, I select connect all equipment, which connects the cameras, the mount, the focuser, PH2, and focus lock. I don't have to, but sometimes I'll slew to a fundamental star and sync on it, and then open up a multiple object sequence and start it, and then I'll go to bed. Or if I'm broadcasting, I'll chat with people. Each object is slewed to, plate solved to the center, and data acquisition is started. If a meridian flip is required, the system does that automatically, recenters and continues on, and then focus is automatic throughout the night. And then it parks itself when the sequence is done. In the morning, I have my cup of coffee, close up the roof, start data transfer into the house via Wi-Fi, and start processing last night's data. So that's the process. Here's an example data sheet. This contains the type of object I've gone after, what it is, the name of it, the date I started collection, how many frames, exposure time, the gain used, the temperature, and which camera. I put which camera in there because I actually have 3 cameras. I can use one of 3. For references, I have a Flickr account, Boone Hill website, and 3 Facebook pages. My personal one, my Northern Cross Observatory one, and my Boone Hill discussion group. So I would open up for questions. Go ahead, unmute yourself, and if you want to ask questions, feel free to do so. You'll have to unmute yourself.
Oh, Doug, this is Andy.
How did I decide on them?
on the scope and cameras? Yeah.
I didn't catch the question.
How did you settle on the scope?
Oh, okay.
How did you settle on the scope?
The criteria that I had. Okay, why don't you mute yourself back up, Mark? I'll mute you. Don't worry about it. I decided I did not want to get an SCT because of the primary moves. Okay, if you use it to focus, you can lock. I know you can lock those down and put a second focus on the back end of it, but I figured why do that when I can get a Ritchie Chrétien that's fixed anyways, and I have to put a focuser on the back end anyways. RCs have a flat field if they're tuned correctly out to the edge on an APC chip. I understand the HD versions of Celestrons are flat to the edge because of the additional optics they put in, so that it actually is advantageous too. But the RC has fixed glass, so it's not going to flex much. This scope had truss tubes, which made it lighter. They were made of carbon fiber, so they're not going to flex much either in temperature changes. And it was light enough that I could take it off and put it on a mount. It's only 34 pounds. The C11s are 28. They're lighter, but I wanted to be able to haul this someplace and be able to set it up without an additional help if I needed to. The G11 matched up well with this mount, or with this OTA as far as weight capacity. It also is light enough that I can haul the head around. It's like 35 pounds for the head. I know the newer ones have a split head, so they're even lighter. But so the G11, I was going to get a Titan and then maybe a 12 or a 14 inch on it, but if I did that, it would stay in the observatory and never go anywhere else. So that's the reason I went with the 10. I went with the RC for the optical reasons. I went with the G11 mount because it's been around for 30 years. It's been supported and has been upgradable ever since, as opposed to other vendors stopped supporting some of their mounts, 5 or 8 years out. They come out with a new brand. They don't support the old ones anymore. So that's another reason I didn't go with other brands. Does that answer your questions?
Yeah, sure did. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, sure did. Thank you.
Any other question, Kelly? Let me unmute you here. Where are you? There you are. Oh, you're unmuted. Go ahead, Kelly. I can't hear you. Go ahead and talk, Kelly. Guess it's not working. Yeah, Rich, I can.
Hey, Doug, it's Rich. Yeah, Kelly just sent a little note to everybody
critters.
asking if there are any problems with critters.
Actually, not in this new one yet. I used to get mice in the old one and a lot of wasps, but I haven't gotten any mice in the new one yet. And I have had to keep track of wasps a little bit. I think I had to spray one nest so far this season. Other than that, it's not too bad. But then I'm out there a lot. I mean, every clear night it's opened up, so I probably scare them away more quickly than I did with the old one.
Just figured out my audio issue.
Oh.
Microphones apparently work better when they're plugged. Just figured out my audio issue. Microphones apparently work better when they're plugged in.
Welcome, Rich. Any other questions?
Hey, Doug?
Yeah.
Hey, Doug? How many nights or days have you been able to use this? So how many nights or days have you been able to use this?
Since January of 2017.
Got the new one.
I have only missed 6 clear nights. And I've acquired 700 hours of data acquisition in those 3 years. So I've used just about every clear night. We've averaged 4.5 clear nights a month for the last 3 years. Although this last month, I think the average might go up a tenth or so because we've had 8 or 9 clear nights in the last 3 weeks. So, but I'm usually out I'll be out clear. I'll be out tonight too. It's going to be clear tonight. There's a. Sorry, what?
Doug, what are you going to tonight? What are you
I'm
going
going to be
after
doing an
tonight
open
since
house
it's going
for
to
the
be
Warren
clear?
Club tonight. So I'm going to let them help drive that decision for the first part of the night, and then the rest of the night I'm going to go after the some more data on the elephant trunk, since it's basically a morning object right now. So the Warren Club asked me to do
very nice.
a virtual star party tonight as their end of the month open house type thing. So 9 o'clock, I'm going to open up the observatory by 9 o'clock and put it on the moon until it gets dark enough to maybe hunt after some nice nebulas in the Milky Way area for them, because those are quick. I can get 15 minutes and get pretty nice images like a lagoon and Trifid and the Eagle and etc. So we'll do some fun stuff for them, and then I'll go after my more serious stuff after we're done there. What else do we want? Yeah.
Doug?
The building was $7,000.
Asking, what are the new buildings that you bought?
That included all the electrical they put in and the motors. The drive system was a little expensive. It was probably I think that was $1,800 just for the drive. Don't remember exactly, but yeah, it was $7,000 by the time they were all done. The original observatory cost me $1,000, and that included all the cement, all the lumber, shingles, and all that, because we did all the labor ourselves. Oh, and the trench from the house to the observatory is 150 feet, and we had to pickaxe it the whole way out back in '84. And I ran number 10 4-wire, basically 3-wire in the ground for 240 out into the observatory. And I split it down to 110 on 2 poles on that side. So I've got the inside on one breaker and the outside on another breaker for people to use. Actually, when I put the new one in, I didn't add the outside plugs yet, but I'll do that if I ever have people out here again. But yeah, I've got 30 amp service out there, 220. That sounds like Chris was nodding his head. I think that was his question. How did I power it? Yeah, that's been out there for since '84. And wow, that's noisy. Chris, all I hear is noise. Yeah. Sorry. I have a slide of Doug Nell with a pickaxe working on the trench. Okay, any other questions from the group over in Sortsy's lab area? There's like 6 people over at Doug Bauer's place.
Got a question.
How much have you seen the light change?
Got a question.
Go ahead.
How much have you seen the light change? Has it gotten?
Yeah, 1984. I had
more pollution out there.
I had Bortle 3 easily. So I had 6.2, 6.3 magnitude. I've lost 1 magnitude since then. That's 36 years ago. It's now about 5, 5.1, 5.2. I'm in a Bortle 5 now.
do the cables for your
No, there is no
connections
computer
run through that
connections from the
same
house
trench?
to the observatory. It's all Wi-Fi. I have a router. I have a
Okay, good.
Wi-Fi router in the observatory and then a router in the house. Those two create a mesh network between the two. And then all the devices that are in the observatory that I need to get access to from the house, which is just the laptop and the IP and the infrared camera, use the Wi-Fi hub. The laptop is hardlined into all the equipment that's there. So it's running the system. I can disconnect from the house and it's still running. Just to be clear, the computers in the house have nothing to do with controlling the system. It's the laptop in the observatory that does all that. And I use remote desktop to connect to it. Any other questions? By the way, no, go ahead. Ask the question.
Knowing what you know, go ahead. For someone who has an interest like you had back in '84, actually a little bit before, what recommendations would you give for someone who wanted to consider doing astroimaging or consider building an observatory? Knowing what you've learned over the almost 30 plus years, saying, okay, here's the mistakes I made. If you want to not repeat my same mistakes,
well,
here's how I would start out knowing
it
what I
depends
know
on what
now.
that
How would
individual wants
you
to start with. If
pass
they
it
want
on
to
somebody?
start astrophotography, I'd tell them to get a DSLR with a 10 to 50 millimeter lens, put it on a tripod, get an intervalometer, and set it to 10 or 18 millimeters. Take 15-second shots all night long. Learn how to stack that data with the stacking software and the processing software, so you learn how to do processing of images. And you get some nice time lapse. You could create time lapse movies if you wanted to, but you could take some nice Milky Way shots. Take 15 or 20 frames at 15 or 18 seconds with a 10 millimeter lens. Stack those and have a nice Milky Way shot. The key there is learning what to do to acquire the data and learning what to do to process the data, independent of what the optical system is. What you learn doing the simple stuff, the simple camera type equipment that I just described, and doing the processing you can use moving forward with longer focal lengths. If you're only interested in observing, I'd get a 6 or 8 inch Dob. You'd have to learn the sky. Yeah, you'd have to learn the sky if you had a Dob, but if you don't want to learn the sky directly, you want to have help with that, then get yourself try to find a Dob or a scope that has a drive tracking system on it at a minimum, or a go-to system on it that'll allow you to go to and also track. Mark, okay, Rich, go ahead.
Hey, Doug, it's Rich. Hey, can you compare the costs of your roll-off roof observatory with a domed, purchased dome system, and what are the pluses and minuses of each of them?
Well, the dome is going to be more expensive. Usually domes are more expensive because they're harder to build. I think when I priced out a 10-foot dome, it was close to. Well, I can't speculate. I don't remember exactly, but it was many thousands of dollars, and that was before you put any drive system on it for both the shutter and the dome itself. Because remember, when you're doing a dome, if you want to automate an observing or a imaging session, you have to not only open up the slit, which you want to motorize if you're going to do a remote, but you have to motorize the observatory dome itself to move in concert with the with the imaging system so that the slit's always in the right position. And that means having a computer-controlled dome. At this point, a roll-off roof, I just have to open it up. I don't have to synchronize it with anything. So there's additional costs for a drive system and a control system for a dome that it doesn't exist for a roll-off roof. That's one advantage in my mind. One of the disadvantages of mine is it's not enclosed enough to keep the dew down and the wind down and any light pollution, direct light pollution that may be around. Domes are really good at keeping your dew down somewhat, keeping the wind down, and limiting ambient light coming in. So that's an advantage of a dome. But I think domes are more expensive to buy and maintain. That's the reason I went with the roll-off. I know domes are really cool looking and everything, but I think they're a bigger... I've got 7-foot walls on this new building, and I have not really had any problem with wind. It could be kind of breezy out. I can hear it in my infrared camera, but the scope doesn't seem to have any problem with any breeze coming through, because it's pretty well tucked under the top level there. Any other questions? Mark, I'm going to unmute you so you can your group can ask.
Does
Nope.
the roof have a rain sensor? When you're in bed, it'll close up on you in case it rains?
Well, let me rephrase that. Not yet. I've only gotten caught once. And that was this year, as a matter of fact, after 3 years. It was supposed to be clear all night that one night, and about 2:30, a small front came through and dropped snow in the observatory while I was sleeping. But it didn't damage anything. It was real light, and I was able to sweep it out. But I'd have to buy a control system for the roof. I mean, I've got a motor on the roof, but I don't have a control system for it. I have to get a control system for it, and then I'd have to get the temperature system for it, etc. So that's just more money. I have to go out there and open up the optics anyway, so. Any other questions? About 150 feet.
Hey, Doug, how far away is the observatory from your house?
I can go back here, and I can look out my window, and I can see it from here.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay, so
yeah. I had to put that mesh network out there, a router out there, in order to enable it to be robust. And I get 35 to 40 megabytes per second transfer rate, so I'm very happy with how it works. Mm-hmm.
Nice, thank you.
Well, I want to thank Rich Brenz and Ron Marvin for joining. They are some of my cohorts. That Richard lives up there at Cadillac. He goes out and checks on the Boone Hill site once in a while, and keeps me company when I come up there. So I'm glad you joined us, Rich. And Ron is another traveler that comes up once in a while. That would be great.
And I'll try to do so some more.
Pleasure, Doug. Thanks for letting me keep my scopes out there. And I was just out there the other day. I've got to do some grass cutting.
Yeah, I got to get up there and do something about that south
ready
wall.
To go for July if you're up here.
Maybe put up some gutters there and seal it again. Rich and I will be hosting the Scouts in October as well, as long as it's still safe to do so. Okay, well now we can go to our. I'll turn it back over to our president, Mr. Sortzi.
Okay, thanks, Doug.
El Presidente. Yes.
Okay, thanks, Doug. Thank you very much for the presentation. I think we all really enjoyed it. If you're a local Seven Ponds Club member, please remember the August 1st presentation featuring Gordon Miller. It'll be another online meeting, and we hope to see you all there. Again, thank you very
My
much,
pleasure.
Doug.
Now we can just chat if you want.
Is there a sign-in sheet?
Yeah, the PayPal to Doug Bach at.
Just gotta find it.
Well, you know, gotta fund that weather station somehow.
We always know what the weather's going to be.
Stop the streaming on YouTube now. So.
It's always clouds.